All right, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. Today I want to talk to you about sleep problems and adrenal fatigue. So I see a lot of people that we work with and that we consult with that are dealing with just crazy problems with sleep, whether it's falling asleep, tossing and turning, not being able to turn off their mind, just with ruminating thoughts, or just can't fall asleep, and they sit there and they toss and turn and they're not able to get asleep. Or there's the problem of when they fall asleep, they wake up several times throughout the evening or throughout the nighttime. Where they're waking up they go to bed at 10:30, takes forever to fall asleep. When they finally do, they're waking up at 1:30 to pee, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or they have a problem with falling asleep. They toss and turn, can't turn their minds off. They can't stay asleep. They wake up several times throughout the night to quote unquote pee, but meanwhile their body is getting them up. And then lastly, of all three, the triad is when they wake up with no energy. Feels like Groundhog Day. Feels like they just went to bed and it's time to get up already, and they wish they could just sleep a little bit longer. So just by a show of likes or hearts, or if you understand that feeling of, I have a problem with falling asleep, I have a problem with staying asleep, and I have a problem with waking up and feeling refreshed, or I have all three. Sometimes you have someone who has a problem with just staying asleep, or someone who has a problem with just falling asleep, or someone who has a problem with waking up and having very little energy. Lizzie, I see your hand up there. But yeah, all three of them is very, very common for someone who's dealing with an adrenal problem. And I want to try to connect the dots for you guys. So one of the things that we wanted to look at was the circadian rhythm. We want to look at blood sugar. We want to look at neurotransmission. We want to look at pathogens. We want to look at hormones, and we want to look at the liver. All of those have a common thread, and the common thread is the adrenals. So the adrenals, a lot of doctors think that there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue. It's all in your head. The real adrenal fatigue is when you do a ACTH test and they test your cortisol levels from the ACTH stimulation, and if the stimulation results in cortisol being secreted, then there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue. But there is a problem with other things that can go wrong with the adrenals, in that they're always constantly firing and they're subclinical, meaning they release some cortisol, but they don't release a lot of cortisol. Or the quality of the hormone is no good because the liver is not breaking it down, and you have these partially metabolized cortisol levels. Or you have a cellular hypothyroid problem where you can't get thyroid hormones into the cell, so metabolic activity is low and your free cortisol levels are high, but there's nothing utilized, meaning you're knocking in on the door, but you can't get in. And that would look like normal adrenal function. Or your HPA axis is broken, where your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your adrenals, the feedback loops aren't working. And that's where I wanted to get into with the circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is really about our hippocampus, and it is housed in the temporal lobe, and it really is responsible for our sleep-wake cycle. And it's driven a lot by cortisol. So if your cortisol is constantly high, it impacts that hippocampus, and that hippocampus becomes somewhat offset. Meaning, like I use the example of, imagine, in daylight savings time, when I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and my alarm, my sprinklers are going off. What's happened is they've been set in a faulty way, and they're not outputting their signals at the right times of the day. And we see that a lot with people that have sleep problems, where they wake up throughout the night, or they're exhausted in the morning and they're wired at night, and their temporal lobes, you ask them about their memory, and their short-term memory is shot. They don't remember things. They don't have good smells, so they can't identify smells, and their circadian rhythm is off. A lot of the people that we see with early Alzheimer's are the ones that, starting to creep with their bedtime, now they're going to bed at 12:30 or 1:30 or 2:30. That's a temporal lobe problem, and their circadian rhythm and their hippocampus is not working very well, and that could be secondary to chronic cortisol levels being high because of stressors, and that will lead to sleep problems for sure. So that's one of the things we want to talk about, and we did talk about. Second thing we talk about is blood sugar. So one of the things that we like to ask patients are, do you have more of a problem falling asleep or staying asleep? So a lot of people will say falling asleep. So if it's a falling asleep thing, in general, not 100% diagnostic criteria, but in general, you'll have high blood sugar levels. So these are the people that have insulin resistance. These are the people that crash after meals. These are the people that crave for sweets no matter how many sugars you eat or need a sweet after a meal. These are the people that have A1C levels that are typically above 5.4. In fact, I was talking to an internal medicine doctor, and he says that he likes to see it at 4.6. No one ever has it there, but suffice it to say, if your A1C levels are coming back and you're seeing your levels are like 5.5 and the level is 5.6, then it's slightly high. Or are you the type of person that wakes up several times up through the night? That's more indicative of having low blood sugar levels, meaning you have a meal, let's say at 6 o'clock at night, you go to bed around 10:30, and then by about 2 o'clock you wake up lit up like a Christmas tree. Your heart's racing, you feel like you just had an adrenaline surge, and in fact that's what you did have. Your cortisol levels have been tanking, and as a result your adrenal glands release adrenaline, and your blood sugar dropped too low. There's not a good quality cortisol to be secreted, and you have waking up several times throughout the night. As far as neurotransmission goes, there's a lot of ways we can talk about this. We can talk about neurotransmission in terms of dopamine, serotonin, even epinephrine, adrenaline. Those are called your catecholamines. And catecholamines, catechol, we find in coffee, or we found in teas, or you can even find them in antioxidants a lot of the times. And it, like I think quercetin has catechols in them, or green tea extract has it, so ECGC. If you're taking these things, you're putting a lot of pressure on your catechols. And as a result, if you have a genetic polymorphism that doesn't clear it out properly, you may have problems with sleep. And that comes down to methylation, MTHFR, that comes to, are you getting leafy greens, or are you eating a lot of synthetic, enriched, fortified, packaged cereals and breads and grains? Because if you are, that's probably slowing down your ability to clear out your catechols. And plus on top of that, you're getting a lot of catechols in your diet. So that's a huge problem. Or you have a B12 problem, and there's so many things that could be handling that B12 problem. Like if there's candida overgrowth, that will slow the recycling of B12. If there's heavy metals, that will slow down the recycling of B12. Taking alcohol will slow down the recycling of B12. Nitric oxide, going to the dentist and having the nitric gas, that can slow down the recycling of B12. Taking methylfolate, if your nitric oxide levels are high, can slow down the recycling of B12. Not having enough stomach acid and having a pathogen like a parasite or a H. pylori infection or other types of mixed biofilms will slow down the recycling of B12. So, and then not to mention there's so many other things like lipopolysaccharides, heavy metals we mentioned, pesticides, sprays, organophosphates. All of these things are going to slow down your ability to clear out neurotransmitters. And if that happens, and even if you don't have very high neurotransmitters, let's say you're not absorbing your proteins, you're not clearing it out very well, and you're wired and tired. And that can be a huge problem. On the serotonin side of things, a lot of the times we have slow MAO enzymes, and MAO is very important, or MAO-A is really important for clearing out your serotonin. Or sometimes what happens is you have these same gut microbiome problems, and you have an upregulation of your quinolinic pathways, and that's very excitatory. And as a result, you can't get out of overwhelm. And there's another thing that you can't sleep with. So there's about 7 things we've mentioned there. As far as pathogens go, a lot of people that I've seen have a lot of problems with sleep are people that have parasites. And I know it seems a little bit weird, but those are really nocturnal beings, and they're more active at nighttime. And so that's where we can't fall asleep, because these parasites are more active. And they'll also cause a lot of endotoxins, or they'll cause their debris will create problems with microglial activation. So meaning you don't have parasites in the brain, but you can have their excrements, which is kind of nasty, right? You think about, oh my goodness, that parasite is pooping inside of me, that goes in my bloodstream, that crosses over the blood-brain barrier. It creates microglial activation, requires me to have good methylation cycles, which we just talked about, which may not be working properly, allows me to have more free radical damage. I don't make a lot of glutathione, and I can't sleep. Now, here's the interesting thing. A lot of people will say, well, I don't think I have this, or I don't think I have that. Just the other day, we diagnosed someone who had celiac disease, and they told me that they don't have any gastrointestinal problems. And it's like, well, how can I have celiac disease if I don't have gastrointestinal problems? The problem is that your weak link in the chain is not your GI tract. Your weak link in the chain is something else, like your joint pains, or your migraine headaches, or your lack of motivation, or your lack of energy, or your inability to sleep. So that's where it becomes really, really difficult, because there's no sort of correlation between cause and effect. And when you're not putting your thinking cap on to think about what are all these things causing these sleep issues, and let's just give you sleep medication, then you are going to put a Band-Aid over the problem, but you're not necessarily going to fix the problem. And that can be good in the short term, but in the long term, what is it doing to your liver? In the long term, what is it doing to the problem that's already gathering steam and momentum and gathering force and causing your body to become more problematic? So that's a huge problem. So other pathogens would be H. pylori. We've been seeing a lot of C. diff. C. diff's really gnarly. I got that word from California. When I grew up in Canada, we never knew that. But then, I moved to California, they used the word gnarly. I think it's a good apropos word in this context, because you have these gnarly pathogens like biofilms that are mixed protozoas. You can have staph, strep, candida, yeast, mold, spirochetes, parasites, and all of these things are really stealing your ecosystem's raw materials and keeping you from sleeping at night. And then, of course, we have the hormones. How many of you guys, by a show of likes or hearts, have been put on a synthetic hormone or a bioidentical hormone, and it really messed you up? I mean, a lot of the work that we do whether we're helping someone who has a fatigue problem, a focus problem, an anxiety problem, a crashing in the middle of the day problem, a weight loss resistance problem, or a sleep problem, is the fact that we have to undo all the things that they tried to do to fix it that made them much worse, that never really got to the root cause of the problem. And I see that probably more so than not everything else with hormones. I really see that to be a problem, because these hormones, phase 1 and phase 2, they may be unequal. You may be having a really fast phase 1 and a really slow phase 2, and you have all of these what we call partially metabolized hormones that go and recirculate, and you have a lot of oxidative stress, so you have a lot of free radical damage, and your cell membranes are very oxidized. There's no place for them to bind to, and therefore, plus there's all this extra hormone yelling, louder, and as a result, that person is not doing a good job of detoxifying. If they're not doing a good job of detoxifying, they're not going to sleep. And that kind of transitions right into liver. Liver, I tell patients, is a third shift worker, meaning it's more active at night. Not that I've done this in a long time, but I remember when I went through college and you get a secondary degree in drinking. I think most of you kind of would agree with that. Maybe you go to a pub once or twice a week, and you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and you know that liver is working overtime to sort of detoxify. And that's a good example of, if you're getting night sweats, that liver is probably not doing a good job, and it's keeping you up at night. So we got a lot of things there. We got the circadian rhythm that gets messed up from the HPA axis, from cortisol always having to be secreted because of the demands of blood sugar not staying stable, your hormones not being balanced, pathogens disrupting your biome, foods that you're eating that you react to, pesticides that are in your foods, bacteria that's in your foods, hormones that are in your foods, and the liver not doing a good job. All of those things can impact your sleep. As a result, you're taking these medications and they're not really addressing the problem. So it's really important to take a whole integrative approach. What we like to do is we really like to look at your adrenals in terms of your blood, your saliva, and your urine. That's a really good, and a before and after, because it can tell us so many things. It can tell us your free cortisol levels compared to your metabolized cortisol levels. If that's not in a good proportion, maybe there's a cellular hypothyroid problem and you're not able to get the free cortisol into the cell, and it's not about pushing an adrenal glandular to make more adrenals, or it's not about getting more thyroid hormones. It's about processing the hormone that you do have and making it work better. That's a huge clinical pearl for you guys. The other thing that we like to do is we like to look at your organic acid tests, and we like to look at your neurotransmitters and your adrenaline. Maybe you're not absorbing your proteins. If you're not absorbing your proteins, how on earth are you going to make your neurotransmitters? How are you going to make your serotonin? Maybe you have gut inflammation and it's causing a switching of the train tracks from your tryptophan into serotonin and 5-HTP into your quinolinic acid, and that's causing you a lot more upregulation of your excitotoxins. Other things that we see on the genetic testing, which is a big part of it, we got to look at your genetics, is GAD-SNP. So those are glutamic acid decarboxylase. Are you on aspartames? Are you on natural flavors or not so natural flavors? It blows my mind that artificial flavors can now be told that they're natural flavors, and then you will buy them and they're not natural flavors. They're natural artificial flavors, and don't even get me started on that. But the problem with that, just like MSG, is it creates a lot of glutamic acid in your body, or glutamate, which are very excitatory, and that will cause difficulty sleeping. And if you have a GAD antibody or a GAD-SNP where you can't convert glutamic acid or glutamate into GABA, you're not going to be able to calm down and you're not going to be able to sleep very well. There's other methylation issues. We talked about MTHFR, we talked about MTR, MTRR, MAT, which is what helps convert methionine into SAMe. PEMT is a big one. We also see a lot of SNPs on that COMT, which causes that dopamine to hang around longer and you can't break it down, MAO, and glutathione SNPs. So we really like to look at all of those things. The neurotransmitters, you can look at that with an organic acid test. And pathogen testing is really important. I see people's blood work, and it's really a pathetic excuse of a blood test. You'll see maybe, if you're lucky, T4. But probably TSH may be on there. You'll never see homocysteine on there. If you're lucky, you'll see iron, but you probably won't see ferritin. You won't see uric acid. Maybe you'll see vitamin D. Sometimes they don't even put fatty acids on there. And sometimes they don't do an auto differential, so you look at the different white blood cells. But you can glean a lot of really great stuff on a blood test if you know what you're doing. What else are we looking at? And then we're looking at liver. So liver is a huge part, and in terms of looking at conversion of T4 to T3, looking at your GGTP in terms of your glutathione levels, looking at your stored iron, which is ferritin, looking at your stored fatty acids, which is triglycerides. All of those will give me good values to get an idea on what's going on with the liver. And all of that can really make huge differences in your sleep. The only thing I never talked about is the sleep hygiene. So we're working with a couple patients, and one of the things I really like to look at is, tell me a little bit about your schedule. Let me sort of live in your life, and I'll kind of sort of close my eyes and take me through your day. And then when you guys take me through your day and I find out that you're not going to sleep, until 3 o'clock in the morning, even on your off days, that's unacceptable. Or you're on your phone for 8 hours a day and you put your phone down 2 minutes before you went to bed. Or you're having your meal right before you go to bed. Or your workstation, aka Grand Central central station, aka your central command station, or your bed doubles up as a discotheque. I mean, you just can't have a room that's multi-purpose. It has to be a quiet, a very what we call a sleep hygienic area. I don't want your cell phone 2 feet from your head. I don't want your radio or your alarm clock 2 feet from your head. I don't want your wireless router 2 feet from your head, let alone in your room, or your TV in your room, or any of that stuff. That has to be a sanctuary where you're getting a sleep when you need to get sleep. And usually that requires you to be somewhere in that 10 to 2 area. So we talked a lot about this, and hopefully that's really helpful for you guys, because those are the things that need to be happening. So let me go and look at some of these comments and questions and see if I can answer some of your questions. So how do I go do that? Okay. All right, so we got lots of thumbs up. Bear, hello. Bear, what's Bear? Hey Kathy, I hope you're doing well. Renee, that's me. So I'm guessing I described you a little bit. I always like those eyes with the hearts in the middle of them. Mike Rogers, I wake up with my lungs feel weak like I did before Cortef. I always tell patients that at the end of the day, your cells aren't breathing properly. At the end of the day. So think about your lungs of the cell. They are not respiring properly. And if from a cellular level, you feel like your lungs aren't, from the system level, if you feel like your lungs are weak and they're not getting good oxygen, same thing's happening from the cellular level. And that comes down to mitochondrial health. That comes down to simple things like good quality oxygen, good quality water, good quality minerals. If you're doing those things, you can do a lot of fundamental things with that, and then you could start to move into more of an evolved, aggressive type of protocol. B12 makes me tired. If B12 makes you tired, I'd be wondering are you getting it into the cell? Do you have adequate antioxidant protection? Is your nitric oxide elevated? Are you sedating that methionine synthase enzyme that causes more hydrogen peroxide and that depletes your glutathione? I mean, I'm guessing that may be happening. Hey, Carly, hope you're doing well. Mike Rogers, CompT. Yeah, CompT is a huge problem for sure. Hey Jack, looking forward to talking to you. I saw that you signed up for a consult, looking to get some insight on what you're talking about. And you guys can do that too, but you got to be serious. I don't want you guys to come about it and think that I'm gonna review all of your blood tests and tell you how to fix it. I just want to try to find out what you're doing, what's working, what's not working, what you haven't done, and most importantly, I always want to find out what would be different if you didn't have this, and how bad is it? What are you at a point now where not getting better is way more costly than getting better? A lot of people that I talk to, they're not there, and good for them. That means that they're not at a point where they're at the bottom of the bucket where they can deal with this no longer. And thanks, Jack, you're awesome too. Karen, Lyme and co-infections, lots of parasites, fungus, toxins, metals. What else don't you have? I mean, that's a lot of stuff. And Lyme is a really, really gnarly pathogen that sheds its cell wall. It shows, sort of sends little deflective scuds in different directions to have your immune system chase it over there. It avoids your detection. It's very slow growing, and it can be a really, really, life-threatening illness. It really is. And combine that with metals, it's a really bad problem. Hey, Melissa, I hope you're doing well. Epstein-Barr is a huge problem. Years of T3 only has raised my sex hormone binding globulin. I don't know if it may do that. We usually look at testosterone too. That would really raise that as well. That could be really a problem. Hey, Tracy, hope you're doing well. Kimberly, you as well. And Mike Rogers, doesn't the body need some homocysteine for some functions? Methyl B12 folate lowers mine to 0. So I would say you need homocysteine to recycle your methionine. You need methionine to make SAMe, and you need methionine to make glutathione. Homocysteine is not necessarily a good or bad supplement. It's a good supplement substrate. It's bad when it's low or high. It tells us information. If it's high, you have blockages and you inhibit SAMEs, methyltransferase enzymes, any enzyme that ends in MT, so COMT, PNMT, BHMT, SHMT, it will inhibit all those enzymes. If it's low, it also causes depletions of glutathione, and you're not putting out free radicals. So low or high is bad. It's a neutral substrate, but if it starts to raise or starts to lower, you know that you have something that isn't working properly. Susan, sure do appreciate you. I sure do appreciate you too. Carol, what are your thoughts on using plexus to help? I don't know what's in plexus. If it's supportive, then great. But I don't like things that are glandulars or stimulatory because you don't need the extra stimulation. So I really, really like adaptogens. Let me show you one of the ones that I really like. I started using a little bit more of is this one. It's called Adaptogen R3. And it has rhodiola in there, which is a really good nutrient to help calm the adrenals. And it has cordyceps. Cordyceps is a really great mushroom that helps with that circadian rhythm in the pituitary. That's something that I really, really like. I don't know what's in there, Carol, so, but I do think that potentially you get junk fillers whenever you see silicone dioxide or you see magnesium stearate or stearic acid. Those are the things that I'm not really cool with. What antioxidants helps absorption of vitamin B12? It's not really an antioxidant, it's a hydrochloric acid, and that's made by your parietal cells. And a lot of people have pernicious anemias where their immune system attacks their parietal cells, or if you have bacteria growth or all the things that we talked about in pathogens, you're not secreting enough intrinsic factor to absorb B12, so it's really intrinsic factor that you're talking about. What brand? This is called Premier Research Labs. I do have a supplement store that that I can post links to that that gives you a 15% coupon, and then I like certain supplements in there that I'll recommend from time to time. So I can put that in the link as well. Is melatonin okay to take every night? I can't sleep without it. No, it's not okay to take every night. We do Dutch tests all the time, and I see people's melatonin levels be, over 10,000 when it shouldn't be above like 25. So it's good short term. It can be really good in terms of biohacking. Like if you got to travel and you want to make sure you get your circadian rhythm back online, then you take melatonin at certain times because the Pacific to Eastern really messed you up. But long-term wise, you're not fixing the problem. And that's really, really key. Karen, thank you. You're incredibly awesome. Well, you're incredibly awesome too. I really appreciate talking to you guys today. It was a massive day. I was here since 8 o'clock this morning. I had back to back to back to back. But you know what? If you love what you do and you feel like you make a difference for people, then you get invigorated by the things that you do. What is the cause of low blood pressure, especially in the summer? So that's a great question. There's a lot of causes, but I look at it in terms of potentially you have low sodium. And so think of it like we look at low glucose, low sodium, low cortisol, low blood pressure. So it's a chronic adrenal stressor where we have all this stuff going on and your body secretes so much aldosterone after a certain amount of time that aldosterone levels start to plummet and you start leaking out a lot of that sodium. And when you leak out that sodium, then you're going to have low blood pressure. That's one mechanism. There's so many other mechanisms that go on, but that's one of them. And Kathy, thank you. You do make a difference and change lives. So grateful that you have changed mine for the better. Thank you so much. You make me, I give you a fist pump. I know you don't like big hugs, so I'll give you a fist pump on that one. I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad. It's funny. I'll tell a quick story and then I got to run. I remember, I might have said this story before, but I remember when my nanny, my mom's mom, Nanny, we called her, she had really bad Alzheimer's. And I remember going to see her inside of the nursing home, and they had moved her closer to the city in Toronto. And it was funny, she had really bad Alzheimer's, but anytime you said, Nanny, do you want to go for ice cream? She would light up like a Christmas tree because she always remembered how much she loved ice cream. But anyways, I remember there was a very nice Korean lady who didn't have any visitors. And I was probably in my my late teens, and I remember I would go and talk to her, and she didn't really, I think she had bad Alzheimer's too, and she forgot that she remembered she can speak English, so she would speak Korean. And I remember just talking to her and sitting with her, and my mom was just so proud of me, and she said, how do you do that? Why do you do that? And I told her, I really do it for selfish reasons. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I do it because it makes me feel so good. And to know that, because the Korean lady would cry, when I would leave. And I just remember thinking, man, I want to do something that I help people because it makes me feel so good. So at the end of the day, Kathy, I'm glad you're feeling better because it makes me feel so good. Anyways, I do it for selfish reasons, not to get you better, but I do it because I want me to feel good and you to feel a little bit better too. So anyways, that's all I got for you guys. If you guys have any questions or you want topics for me to talk to you about, that's my passion. I really am Forrest Gump when I listen to webinars. I listen to them over and over and over again just for me to get another piece of clinical information that I can tell you guys that you can be doing it on your own. But anyways, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I call myself the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Have a great evening.